Hello, welcome to my tutorial on using functions and defining functions. So, what am I doing today? Today I want to write a program that will create a function and call a function. And I'm going to explain to you what that does and why it's better than just doing math or doing anything one line at a time. So let's just set up what we're doing here. Let's just make a variable x and set it equal to 5. Okay, and then let's pretend I wanted to do y is equal to x squared. So squared in Python is 2 stars. That's an exponent. So x to the power of 2. And then let's say I wanted to add 5. Okay. So basically what this is going to do, this is a fine way of doing programming. If you just wanted to do simple mathematics, you could just write an equation, as long as you know how to do it, like I said, the exponents. You could then let the computer run the program for you. So 5 squared is 25 plus 5 is 30. So that's pretty cool. We can use Python to do equations. Okay, so if I change x to say 10, now we know that when we square 10 we're going to get 100. So we expect the result of 100 plus 5 is 105. Okay, so we could use Python in that way, and that's pretty cool. That's just a way of getting things started. However, as you learn later on, it's better to do functions. So what is a function? Well, in math class, I tell my students that f of x is equal to y. I actually write that, so I'll put a little comment. F of x. I tell students that it's the same thing as y. It doesn't actually have to be y. It could be g of x, it could be L, but it's the same as using a variable. However, you'll see it already says here, it says can't assign a function to call. In Python, anytime you use these parentheses after a variable assignment like f, or even if I wrote the word function, it doesn't actually matter what I write here. This is a variable. I could change this, for example, to the word variable. That's not a problem. What's the problem is when you put parentheses in your variable. When it sees that, it is assuming you're calling a function, because that's the built-in syntax. Okay. So for example, anytime I write f of x right here, this is interpreted by the computer to call the function f of x. All right. Whereas up here, when I wrote variable equals 10, this is assigning a value of 10 equal to the variable. So this is not the same. I'm not calling a variable. I'm not saying run a program. Because remember, a function is a process. A variable is something that we're temporarily or permanently storing data. Okay, so this is an assignment, this is a call. I'm going to talk more a little about that in a little bit. So let's go back to here. I'm just going to put this back at x so you understand that's not the problem. The problem is that we use this function notation. So what we have to do, instead of using f of x, is we're actually going, I mean, we can use f of x, but to do it we have to tell the computer what f of x is. So to do that in Python, you use define. You have to define it. So you said def f of x, and then don't forget a colon, okay? And this is where you can do f of x equals this. But you don't write f of x equals this. You just make some variable, call it y, because that's what it equals to, and set that equal to x squared plus 5. Okay? Now, right now, this is just a function right here. It's going to do this, but I actually don't know what's going to happen if I try to run this function with y. In fact, I can tell just by how many errors I have that this is not going to work. So I like to just run it anyway to see what happens. So it says that name y is not defined. Okay. Oh, well, print f of x. Let's try that. None. What does that mean? Well, what none means is that we're actually, nothing is wrong with our function. Let's see what this says. Redefining x from outers. Okay. Unused variable. Oh, unused variable. I wonder what that means. What is a function? A function takes an input and produces an output. Okay. In computers, it's the same. We're going to take an input. In this case, actually, you don't even need an input, but we're going to take an input, x, and we're going to return an output. So you actually have to type that in. Now watch when I type return. You see how it changes colors? and we're going to return y. Okay. Now let's see what happens. It works. Wow. Even though we got this little error code. Why is this an error code? So hopefully you're still with me right now. I think so far so good. But this error says redefining name x from outer scope, line 3. So basically we changed this to 5, right? And it works. Why is that a problem? Well, let me show you something. Let's say I put a 6 here. What the heck's going on here? Now it's 41. So why is it 41? Well, let's talk about it. I started the program. The computer reads the first line of code it reads is line 3. Actually just skips this. There's nothing in line 2. So x is equal to 5, right? These are just instructions. These are saying if you're told to run the function f of x, do this, y equals this, and return the output of y. So whatever y is the output. And later on, I tell it to print it, okay? Now what's going on here? The return value of y is going to equal this equation. However, x is defined first as 5. When we call the function though, when I wrote f of 6, I actually replaced x with 6. And so instead of writing x, I actually used 6. And so that actually overwrites the existing 5. Let me explain that again. If I make this x equals 5 and I leave this as x, then x is equal to 5. So it'll plug 5 in to this equation in line 6. And that's our result is 30. But if I write anything else like 8, for example, even though I started off the program telling the computer, hey, when you see x, put a 5 there, I'm going to overwrite that by putting an 8 there. So that means that now it's going to do 8 squared plus 5. What does that actually mean? What it means is this line is unnecessary. Okay? That line is not needed. Because I have a variable inside of my function, then I can have, whoops, what am I doing? I can redefine the function there. What's cool about this is I can run this function as many times as I want and get lots of results. Wow. You can even